The gentle hum of the communications array filled the observation deck as Nora Blackwell adjusted the frequency modulator for the third time in an hour. Her fingers danced across the holographic interface with practiced precision, searching through the cosmic static that filled the void between stars. At 26, she had already spent 4 years aboard the exploration vessel Horizon's Edge, listening to the universe's whispers and mapping the electromagnetic signatures of distant worlds. Still chasing ghosts in the static? Came a warm voice from behind her dot. Nora turned to find Cale Thorne leaning against the doorframe, his pilot's uniform rumpled from a long shift at the helm. His dark hair was disheveled in that effortless way that made her heart skip, though she'd never admit it aloud. They'd been friends since academy training, and she valued that friendship too much to complicate it with romantic feelings. "Not ghosts," she replied, turning back to her instruments. "Patterns. There's something out there, Cale. I can feel it." He moved closer, close enough that she could smell the faint scent of the ship's recycled air mixed with something uniquely him. "Your intuition has never led us wrong before." "What kind of patterns?" Nora's fingers paused over the controls. For 3 weeks, she'd been detecting subtle irregularities in the background radiation from the Kepler 442 system. Most of her colleagues dismissed it as pulsar interference, but something deep in her chest told her otherwise. The patterns felt almost deliberate. "It's probably nothing," she murmured, though her eyes remained fixed on the swirling data streams before her. "Captain Morrison thinks I'm wasting time on sensor ghosts." Cale settled into the chair beside her workstation, his presence both comforting and distracting. "Since when has Captain Morrison's opinion ever stopped you from following your instincts?" Before Nora could respond, a sharp tone cut through the ambient noise of the communications array. Her breath caught as a new signal appeared on her screen, stronger and more defined than anything she'd detected before. The waveform pulsed with an almost rhythmic quality, like a heartbeat transmitted across the stars. "Cale," she whispered, her hands trembling as she began isolating the signal. "Look at this." The pattern that emerged was unlike anything in the Federation's xenolinguistic databases. It possessed a mathematical structure that suggested intelligence, but the underlying harmonics were hauntingly beautiful, almost musical in their complexity. "Is that ... double quotes?" Cale leaned forward, his shoulder brushing against hers. "Is that a distress call?" Nora's training kicked in as she ran the signal through the ship's translation matrix. The computer struggled with the alien syntax, but fragments of meaning began to emerge. Words like sanctuary, fleeing, and dying light flickered across her screen, between long strings of untranslatable harmonics. "Oh my God," she breathed. "It's not just a distress call. Someone's out there, and they're trying to tell us their story." As if responding to her recognition, the signal strengthened. Through the static and translation errors, a voice began to emerge, not human, but unmistakably alive and filled with desperate hope. "To any who hear this, our world fades ... The machines come. We are the last ... please ... The transmission cut to static, leaving Nora staring at her screen in stunned silence. First contact protocols flooded her mind, but they seemed inadequate for the weight of what she'd just experienced. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, an entire civilization was crying out for help. "We have to tell Captain Morrison," Cale said, his voice tight with excitement and concern. Nora was already moving, downloading the transmission data to a secure drive. "She want to verify the authenticity first. Run it through the xenobiology department, ... double quotes. While whoever sent this might be dying," Cale finished grimly. They found Captain Morrison in her ready room, reviewing supply manifests with the kind of meticulous attention that had kept the Horizon's Edge operational for 7 years of deep space exploration. Elizabeth Morrison was a woman who'd earned her position through competence rather than connections, and she approached every decision with calculated precision. "Captain," Nora began, barely containing her excitement. "I need you to listen to something." Morrison looked up from her reports, taking in Nora's flushed cheeks and Cale's tense posture. "Ms. Blackwell, if this is about those sensor anomalies you've been tracking—" "It's not anomalies," Nora interrupted, then caught herself. "I mean, yes, it started with the anomalies. But, Captain, I've made contact." "Real contact." The older woman's expression shifted from mild annoyance to sharp attention. "Play it." The alien voice filled the ready room, its haunting harmonics somehow more poignant in the confined space. Morrison listened without interruption, her weathered features revealing nothing of her thoughts. When the transmission ended, silence stretched between them like a held breath. "Computer analysis?" Morrison asked finally. 94% probability of genuine intelligent origin," Nora replied promptly. "The mathematical structures are too complex for natural phenomena, and the linguistic patterns suggest a sophisticated communication system." Morrison leaned back in her chair, her fingers drumming against the desk in a rhythm Nora had learned to recognize as deep thought. "Distance to origin point?" "Approximately 16 light years in the direction of the Kepler 442 system," Cale answered. 3 weeks at maximum warp if we adjust our current trajectory." 3 weeks, Morrison repeated. "To investigate what could be the Federation's first contact with a non-human intelligence." The weight of that possibility settled over them like a physical presence. First contact had been theoretical for so long, something future generations might experience. The idea that it could be happening now to them seemed almost surreal. "There are protocols," Morrison continued slowly. "Procedures that must be followed. We'd need to notify Starfleet, request specialized personnel, ... double quotes. Which would take months," Nora said, her frustration bleeding through her professional composure. "Captain, whoever sent this message is in trouble. They're asking for help, and we might be the only ones close enough to provide it." Morrison studied the younger woman's face, perhaps seeing something of her own younger self in Nora's passionate conviction. "Ms. Blackwell, what you're suggesting could change everything. If we make contact with an alien species, we bear the responsibility for how humanity is first perceived by another intelligence. Then we make sure that perception is worthy of who we are," Cale said quietly. "We answer their call for help because that's what humans do. We don't abandon people in need." The captain was quiet for a long moment, her gaze moving between the communications specialist and the pilot who had served under her command for years. Finally, she touched her cum badge. "Bridge, this is Captain Morrison. Plot a course for the Kepler 442 system, maximum warp. We have a rescue mission to undertake." As they left the ready room, Nora felt a mixture of elation and terror. They were about to make history, but more than that, they were rushing toward the unknown to help strangers they'd never seen. The transmission continued to echo in her mind, that haunting voice carrying its message of hope across the vast darkness. She didn't know it yet, but that voice would change not just the course of human history, but the course of her own heart in ways she could never have imagined. Cale Thorne's hands moved across the pilot controls with an intimacy born of years at the helm, but his mind was elsewhere, focused on the woman, hunched over the communications console 3 decks below. 2 days into their journey toward the Kepler 442 system, and Nora hadn't left her station for more than a few hours of restless sleep. "She's going to burn herself out," he muttered to himself, adjusting their course to avoid a cluster of spatial anomalies that registered as electromagnetic storms on his sensors. The bridge was quiet during gamma shift, with only essential personnel monitoring the ship systems as they pushed through warp and maximum sustainable speed. Cale preferred these peaceful hours when he could think without interruption, though lately his thoughts always seemed to circle back to the same impossible subject. He'd been in love with Nora Blackwell for 3 years, 2 months and 16 days, not that he was counting. It had started gradually, a recognition of her brilliant mind evolving into admiration for her passionate dedication, then deepening into something that made his chest tight whenever she smiled. But Nora had never shown interest in anything beyond their friendship, and Cale had learned to treasure what he had rather than risk losing it by wanting more. The comm system chirped softly. "Bridge, this is communications. I'm picking up another transmission from the source." Cale's heart rate quickened at the sound of Nora's voice, tired but electric with excitement. "Patching it through to your station now." The signal that filled the bridge was stronger than the first, less filtered by cosmic interference. The alien voice carried clearer emotional undertones, urgency, mixed with something that sounded almost like gratitude. "We sense your approach. Beings of matter and metal. Hope grows where only darkness dwelt. But beware the swarm that devours light itself. ... Double quotes. Cale's pilot instincts immediately focused on the warning. "Nora, what does swarm that devours light mean? Are we flying into a trap?" Her response came after a pause, filled with the sound of rapid data analysis. "I don't think it's a trap. The linguistic patterns suggest genuine fear. Whatever they're warning us about, they're more afraid of it than they are hopeful about our arrival." "That's not exactly reassuring," Cale replied, but he was already adjusting their approach vector, planning evasive maneuvers for threats he couldn't yet see. Over the next few hours, more transmissions arrived in sporadic bursts. Each message revealed more about the beings calling for help, a species they called themselves the Vexani, creatures of energy and thought, who could manifest physical forms, but existed primarily as living light. Their world had been invaded by something they described as machines that consume, essence artificial beings that fed on the very energy that comprised Vexani life. "It's like vampires," Nora explained during her brief appearance on the bridge to brief Captain Morrison. "But instead of blood, these invaders drain the fundamental life force of an entire species." Her exhaustion was evident in the pale cast of her skin and the slight tremor in her hands as she held her data pad. Cale wanted to order her to rest, to take care of herself the way she took care of everyone else, but he had no authority to do so. Instead, he caught her arm gently as she prepared to return to communications. "When's the last time you ate something?" he asked. Nora blinked at him, clearly having to think about the question. "There was that protein bar yesterday." "That was 2 days ago," Cale corrected patiently. "Come on. The transmissions will be there when you get back." She started to protest, but Captain Morrison intervened. "He's right, Miss Blackwell. You're no good to anyone if you collapse from exhaustion. Take 2 hours. That's an order." The ship's recreational lounge was nearly empty during the shift change, giving them privacy as Cale replicated a meal that actually resembled food rather than the nutrient dense rations Nora had been surviving on. She ate mechanically at first, but gradually seemed to remember the pleasure of taste and warmth. "Tell me about them," Cale said softly. "The Vexani. What are they really like?" Nora's eyes lit up with the passion that had first drawn him to her. "They're incredible, Cale. Their language isn't just words, it's emotion and color and music all woven together. When they communicate, they're sharing pieces of their actual essence with each other. And you can understand all that?" "Fragments," she admitted. "The computer handles the basic translation, but there are layers of meaning that go beyond language. It's like trying to describe a symphony to someone who's never heard music." Cale watched her face as she spoke, memorizing the way her expressions shifted from wonder to frustration to determination. He'd seen her passionate about her work before, but this felt different, more personal somehow. "There's something else," Nora continued, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "One of the voices. It's different from the others. Stronger. More individual. I think it might be the one who's been sending most of the transmissions. What makes this one special?" Nora was quiet for a long moment, staring down at her half-empty plate. I know this sounds crazy, but sometimes when I'm translating the messages, it feels like they're being sent directly to me. Not to humanity, not to the ship, to me specifically. Cale's chest tightened at the wistful tone in her voice. He'd heard that same note when she talked about theoretical breakthroughs or discovered new stellar phenomena, but never when she talked about a person, even an alien person. Maybe they can sense that you're the one listening, he suggested, trying to keep his voice neutral. Maybe, she agreed, but her expression suggested she thought it was more than that. They were interrupted by the ship's communication system crackling to life. This time, the transmission was different, clearer, more focused, as if the sender had learned to adjust their signal for human receivers. Nora ... The sound of her name spoken in that otherworldly voice made them both freeze. The alien pronunciation was slightly off, but unmistakably intentional. Nora, who listens across the void. We feel your mind touching ours ... You bring light to our darkness ... double quotes. Nora was on her feet before the transmission ended, rushing back toward communications with Cale close behind. They found the department in chaos, with technicians frantically running analysis on a signal unlike anything they'd recorded before. How do they know your name? Demanded Chief Petty Officer Jenkins, the department's supervisor, who'd been skeptical of the entire mission from the beginning. I don't know, Nora replied, but her hands were already working to isolate and enhance the signal. It could be coincidence, or maybe they've been monitoring our internal communications ... But even as she spoke, Cale could see she didn't believe her own explanations. There was something in her eyes, a recognition that went deeper than professional curiosity. The next transmission came within minutes, and this time the voice was accompanied by something that made every instrument in communications fluctuate wildly. We are dying, Nora of the listening heart. But your voice gives us strength to endure. We will wait for you among the shattered moons of our world ... double quotes. As the signal faded, Nora stood perfectly still, her face pale, but her eyes bright with unshed tears. Around her, the other technicians were checking their equipment and running diagnostics, but she seemed oblivious to everything except the echo of that alien voice. Nora, Cale said gently, touching her shoulder. Are you all right? She turned to him, and he saw something in her expression that made his heart sink even as it filled him with wonder. It was the look of someone who had just encountered something that would change everything, a recognition that transcended species and space and all the rational limitations of what should be possible. They're not just calling for help, she whispered. They're calling for me. Captain Morrison's voice cut through the moment via the ship's intercom. All senior staff to the bridge. We're approaching the outer edge of the Kepler 442 system, and sensors are detecting multiple artificial constructs ahead. As they made their way to the bridge, Cale felt the weight of inevitability settling over him. Whatever was waiting for them, among the moons of an alien world, he knew it would change Nora in ways that might take her completely beyond his reach. But even as his heart broke a little more with each step, he found himself hoping that whatever connection she'd formed with these creatures would bring her the happiness she deserved. The bridge's main view screen showed a star system in chaos. Debris fields glittered like deadly snow between the planets, and strange geometric shapes moved with mechanical precision through the wreckage of what had once been a thriving civilization. In the distance, barely visible against the cosmic background, clusters of light pulsed with the rhythm of living heartbeats. The Vexani, Nora breathed, pressing her hand against her chest as if she could feel their pain directly. And their hunters, Captain Morrison added grimly, indicating the angular ships that prowled between the refugee clusters like sharks scenting blood. Cale's hands found their familiar place on the pilot controls, ready to navigate them through whatever dangers lay ahead. But his eyes kept drifting to Nora, memorizing her profile against the starlight, holding on to these last moments before everything changed forever. The being who would change Nora's life forever was dying when she first saw him. Zephyr existed as a cascade of silver and blue light, his essence flickering like a candle in the wind as he pressed against the viewing port of the Vexani refugee vessel. Through the horizon's edge's enhanced sensors, Nora could see him clearly, a consciousness made of pure energy, beautiful and alien and desperately fragile. Nora ... His voice came through the ships, communications with a clarity that made her chest tighten. You came? As we hoped. As we dreamed in the darkness ... Can you understand me? She whispered into her headset, aware that the entire bridge crew was watching this historic first contact unfold. The silver light pulsed brighter. Your words. Your thoughts ... They sing to us across the void. We have been listening to your beautiful mind ... Captain Morrison stepped forward. This is Captain Elizabeth Morrison of the United Earth vessel Horizon's Edge. We're here to help. Can you tell us about the ships attacking you? But Zephyr's attention remained focused on Nora's communication frequency. The Iron Swarm, machines that consume light itself. They have devoured 6 of our worlds. We are all that remains ... How many of you? Nora asked, her professional training keeping her voice steady, even as her heart raced at the intimacy in his tone. 347 souls aboard this vessel. 12 more ships scattered among the asteroids ... We fade with each passing moment ... Kale's voice cut through the exchange from the pilot's station. Captain, the mechanical ships are changing course. They've detected our presence. A tactical display showed a dozen angular vessels breaking away from their patrol patterns, accelerating toward the human ship with predatory grace. Each construct was roughly the size of the Horizon's Edge, but their hull configurations were unlike anything in Federation databases, smooth surfaces that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect. Evasive maneuvers, Captain Morrison ordered. Take us closer to the refugee ships. If we're going to make a stand, it should be where we can protect civilians. As the Horizon's Edge swept toward the cluster of Vixani vessels, Nora maintained her connection with Zephyr. Through her headset, she could hear other voices joining his, a chorus of light beings, sharing their fear and desperate hope. They drain us, Nora of the listening heart. Steal our essence to fuel their expansion ... We cannot fight them as you fight. We are thought and dream and song ... Then we'll fight for you, Nora said fiercely, surprising herself with the conviction in her voice. The first exchange of weapons fire lit up the space around them. The Iron Swarm vessels discharged beams of sickly yellow energy that seemed to bend reality around them, while the Horizon's Edge responded with conventional plasma torpedoes and phaser arrays. The mechanical ship's hulls absorbed most of the human weapons' impact, but they seemed unprepared for the unexpected resistance. They're not used to prey that shoots back, observed Lieutenant Torres from Tactical. But the battle was taking its toll on the Vexani. Each time an Iron Swarm beam passed near their ships, Nora could hear the refugees crying out in harmonized anguish. Whatever those yellow energy discharges were designed to do, they were affecting the light beings even at a distance. Nora ... Zephyr's voice was weaker now, filled with pain. We cannot endure much more. If you could, if there were a way ... What do you need? She asked desperately. How can we help you? Physical contact, touching matter, grounds our essence, prevents the drain. But we have no way to ... An idea struck her, dangerous, unprecedented, but potentially their only hope. Captain, I need to board their ship. The bridge fell silent except for the sounds of ongoing combat. Captain Morrison turned to stare at her. Absolutely not. We have no idea what their atmosphere is like. What biological hazards might exist? They don't have atmosphere, Nora interrupted, her fingers flying over her console as she pulled up the sensor readings. They exist as pure energy. Their ships are essentially hollow shells designed to contain and focus their consciousness. I could beam directly into their vessel wearing an environmental suit. Even if that were safe, Morrison replied, what possible good could it do? Nora's cheeks flushed as she realized how her answer would sound. He said physical contact grounds their essence. If I'm there, in person, it might stabilize him enough to help coordinate an evacuation. Cale's voice carried across the bridge with carefully controlled emotion. You mean it might stabilize one of them? What about the others? She couldn't meet his eyes. We have to start somewhere. The ship shuddered under another barrage from the iron swarm. On the tactical display, 2 more mechanical vessels were approaching from the far side of the asteroid field. Time was running out. Permission to volunteer for the boarding mission. Captain, Cale said suddenly. Morrison looked between her communications officer and her pilot, reading the unspoken tension between them. Both of you are too valuable to risk on an untested theory. Then I'll go alone, Nora said, already moving toward the turbolift. It's my theory, my risk to take. Nora ... Zephyr's voice followed her through the com system. Yes. Come to us. We will protect you as we can ... The transporter room was a flurry of activity. As Chief O'Brien prepared the emergency beam-out protocols, while Nora suited up in a full environmental suit. The helmet felt claustrophobic, but she forced herself to focus on the technical aspects of what she was attempting. This is insane, Cale said, appearing beside her as she checked the suit's life support systems. You don't know anything about these beings beyond their radio transmissions. I know they're in pain, Nora replied, her voice muffled by the helmet. I know they're dying, and I know they asked for help. They asked for you specifically, he corrected, and she could hear the hurt in his voice. Nora, what if this connection you feel? What if it's not what you think it is? She paused in her preparations, finally meeting his eyes through her visor. What if it is exactly what I think it is? Before he could respond, the transporter chief announced the coordinates were locked. Nora stepped onto the pad, her heart hammering against her ribs as the familiar tingle of the transporter beam began to take hold. The Vexani ship was unlike anything she could have imagined. The walls seemed to pulse with their own inner light, and the air, though her suit's sensors detected no actual atmosphere, felt alive with whispered conversations in languages of pure emotion. But all of that faded when she saw Zephyr. He materialized before her as she watched, energy coalescing into a form that was recognizably humanoid, but composed entirely of shifting silver and blue light. Tall and graceful, with features that seemed to flow like water, he was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. Nora ... His voice surrounded her, no longer filtered through mechanical translation, but somehow speaking directly to her consciousness. You shine so bright ... Even through your metal shell ... Are you all right? She asked, stepping toward him without thinking. You seemed so weak before ... her presence. It anchors us ... gives us strength ... As he spoke, other Vixani began to appear around them, dozens of beings of living light, their forms stabilizing as they drew near her physical presence. We did not dare hope. But you are here. You are real ... We're going to get you out of here, Nora promised. All of you. We just need to coordinate with my ship. She was interrupted as Zephyr's form suddenly flared brighter. Through the ship's hull, she could see one of the iron swarm vessels approaching, its yellow energy beams already beginning to probe at their defenses. They have found us. Again. ... Fear rippled through his light. Nora, you must go. If they drain you as they drain us ... No, she said firmly, reaching out instinctively to touch his face. Her gloved hand passed through his energy form, but where it should have found nothing, she felt warmth and a subtle electric tingle that made her entire body come alive. "I'm not leaving you." The moment of contact sent a shockwave through both of them. Zephyr's form blazed like a star, and Nora felt something fundamental shift in her perception of reality. Suddenly she could feel what he felt, the approach of the mechanical hunters, the fear and love of his people, and underneath it all, a connection that transcended species and physical form. Nora ... His voice was wonder and recognition, and something deeper than both. "You feel it too ... The binding of souls across the void ... around them." The other Vexani were glowing brighter, their forms more stable and defined. Whatever was happening between Nora and Zephyr was affecting the entire ship, grounding their energy and giving them strength. But the Iron Swarm had noticed the change as well. Through the viewing ports, Nora could see the mechanical ships converging on their position, their yellow weapons charging for what looked like a final assault. Her comm badge crackled with Kale's voice. "Nora, we're reading massive energy fluctuations from your location. What's happening over there?" She looked at Zephyr, at the hope blazing in his light-formed eyes, at the dozens of beings whose existence now depended on choices she was only beginning to understand. "I think," she said slowly, her hand still tingling from contact with alien energy, "I'm falling in love with someone from another world." The admission hung in the air between them as the battle for their survival and their future began in earnest around them.